Mrs. Wagner?
Here. If we could all rise.
One moment. Is Mr. Lure online?
Mr. Lure was here earlier. I believe he had to run home real quick to grab something, and he would be back. So
Thank you.
Okay, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, first we're going to have our preliminary budget presentation.
We don't hear anything right now if anyone's trying to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. We're not trying to say anything just yet. Dr. Forte is getting ready to do the budget presentation.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time of year, our district spends a considerable amount of time coming up with a budget for the subsequent school year. And for the public, what we typically do is run something called a preliminary budget presentation, which is tonight. Later, the school board will vote on the preliminary budget. The final budget will be at the second April meeting. I think it's April 27th. Double check that.
26.
April 26th is when the budget is finalized and then submitted to the county. So we'd like to keep the strategic plan on our presentations, especially when it revolves around funding, because we want to remember what is the funding for, what are the goals, what are our goals that the community helped us define and implement since in our plan that's called Strategic Plan 2022. And our district goals for the year, one is to increase achievement for all students who are not meeting grade level benchmarks. And the second one is to create and execute a plan for the 2020-2021 school year in all aspects for online, hybrid, and/or in-person educational program due to the COVID crisis. Here's our budget calendar. As you can see, we start this process pretty early in October, November, when the administrative team starts discussing the budget for the next year. We work on it through the committees, the board committee. We work on it individually with our individual board members. We also work on it individually with our staff. And this is where that whole thing kind of culminates into the preliminary budget, which you see in this presentation. Also, there is a small handout. And if for those of you that are home, there's a one-page handout that you can look up on our website. It's under Board of Education budgets, and then go to the 2020, 21, 22 budget. You'll see a handout. So this budget provides ongoing support of technology. These are just a few things that we like to mention. We have a new Chromebook monitoring system that helps the teachers see what's going on in the virtual classrooms. We also did purchase a subscription to Zoom, and because we preferred Zoom in the beginning, if you recall, there was some issues with Zoom bombing, and then when we purchased the paid version, and we were able to implement some security on there that helped. We still have some Some replacements. We do this all the time. We have the FM systems in our classrooms need to be replaced. Our smart boards, things like that. Sorry about that. Now we have some new desktops replace. This is all, most of it's replacement stuff and renewing things. We're starting to replace some of our wireless access points district wide. This budget still continues. I'm on slide 6, Cindy. This budget still continues to fund the class 3 officers in all 4 locations. That's the 3 main buildings and the annex, Riverview Annex. It also provides security for our ESY and enrichment program that we offer every summer. Buildings and grounds, we have an HVAC project at Riverview. That's to replace the heat and possibly add air conditioning. That's going to be discussed a little later today. We have a roof replacement job at Lakeview. That's been a last section of roofing that we have in the district that's ready to be replaced. We have been doing these sections over a period of time, and we're down to the last 60,000 square feet. So once this is done, our roofs throughout the district should be in pretty good shape for a while. We have money in the budget for this thing called 911 Inform, and that money will come back to us in a grant. We're going to wait to see. We're going to wait on the grant before we implement this, but this is something that we're promised. This was something that was voted on by the voters of the state. It was a security grant a few years ago. It came from, it was a referendum on the state ballot, and we still haven't received the funds yet, but we were told recently it looks like it's getting close. We also have money in the budget for an updated demographic study, continuation of our door repair project, interior door project, and we still continue to fund some outsourcing of transportation routes. Our capital reserve balance, the capital and maintenance reserve balance is starting, this is from the audit on July 1, 2020. We had $1.5 million in maintenance reserve and $5.5 million in capital. We will be withdrawing $2.8 million this year. That's for the 21-22 budget, but we also withdrew several $100,000 during this school year for repairs and upgrades throughout the year. Okay, I'm on slide 9 now. We have in the budget some new staff to keep our class sizes within the ranges that we prefer. We have 2 elementary teachers, 1 at Riverview, 1 at Lakeview, 2 part-time special education teachers, some new aides, a gifted and talented teacher. We have money to increase our extended school year program and ABA programs. We have money in the budget for some textbook replacements. We have money in the budget to continue our relationship with St. Clair's in-school clinical service program and our behaviorists through Uncommon Thread. Now I'm on slide 10, Cindy. So this is where the budget comes down to. These are all the line items on the budget. Anybody can take their time to look through that. And we will post, as you see, if you look on the website, you will see several years past budgets and what's called a user-friendly budget. And you can peruse those. Those are all different areas, but I want to mostly focus on slide number 11, which is the next slide, Cindy. So we worked hard to bring this budget in as low as possible throughout some cuts and some pre-buys, things that we were going to do in the future. We bought this year. Some of the things that we were able to do was able to bring the budget in at a 1.44% increase. And at that time, we spoke to the board and we said, if we get any additional funds from the state, we will use those funds to as tax relief. So we were able to get an additional $382,000, and we will be using $300,000 of that to reduce the tax burden. So rather than being a $102 average, it's an $102 increase on the average home. It's an $83 increase on the average home. So when you look at this, it's hard to deal with because you see the 1.98% increase, but that's due to the fact that our budget's on a school year and this is on a fiscal year. So this is really a 0.5% tax levy increase, but some of the rest of it has to do with last year's budget as well. So the money, again, we did get additional funds. I want to go over this just for a minute. The state did promise districts like Denville. There were several districts around the state that were not receiving their fair share from the state. This is for 10 years. So we've been shorted millions of dollars. Back in 2018, the state passed something called S2, Senate 2. It was a proposal to start fully funding the educational state aid from the state. And last year, due to the COVID crisis, we did not get our increase. It was supposed to be phased in over 7 years. We did get our first 2. And then the third one, they put on hold due to COVID. And then this year, they gave us the increase we were supposed to get for last year and this year's increase. So in the next few years, we should be getting what we deserve. I mean, it's an odd sounding thing, but according to the law, we were being underfunded by the state. And the goal is to bring us up to the level that the state should be funding us. One of the ways they did that, well, there's 2 ways. One is they increased spending on schools from the state. And the second one was they were, as we were saying before, we weren't receiving all the money we should have, but several districts were receiving more money than they should have. So it sounds simple, but they're starting to take away some of the funding from the districts that were receiving more than they should have and starting to give it to the districts that were not receiving what they should have. So that's where we're at with that. The good news is we are getting that money now, and we will be able to reduce the tax burden. Let me rephrase that. It's not reducing the tax burden. It's reducing the increase. Just want to make sure everybody understands that. So this, I always like to do this at the end. It's kind of like just something to walk away with. What are the things that you remember? We do provide a Chromebook for all students district-wide. That was done due to the COVID crisis. Our district did get out in front of it and purchase Chromebooks so that every child would have a Chromebook. We even just purchased another 1,000 Chromebooks so that we could replace some of the ones that were old and having difficulty on at home Wi-Fi. We also provide in-home Wi-Fi for 25 families in need. And this Lakeview roof project is 60,000 square feet. It represents the last of the roofs for the next decade. This budget represents a 0.51% increase, tax levy increase. And we continue to fund our behavioral services program with St. Clair's. We continue to fund lunches for economically disadvantaged students. Our district doesn't qualify for the free lunch program for the entire district. So a few years back, our district, and including the town, has helped out too. We do fund lunches for about 80 students that were eligible but weren't receiving them due to the fact that we didn't qualify for the program. We do qualify for it now in some cases, so there is a little bit of a less burden, but then COVID came in and everything changed again. But it is important to note that we are continuing to fund that program, and even during COVID, we were delivering lunches to students. Any students that needed a lunch or asked for a lunch, we gave them. We were able to deliver them. And then there's money in this budget to run a summer program for students, not just students with IEPs, but for all students that qualify. And we will be getting more information about that. There will be a little bit about it today from Dr. Collison in a little while. And our 5-year strategic plan will be finished up in June 2022. And we plan on creating a new 5-year plan. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. I think, why don't we let you roll into your superintendent's comments, and then we can maybe pause and open up questions about your presentation and your comments to the board.
So the status of our schools is that all schools are open as of March 5th. We do have 12 current positive cases district-wide. That's including staff and students. And we have a total of 72 people being quarantined. But all of our schools are open. People are following the social distancing. They're following the mask wearing. And in cases when we have some positives, we have been able to isolate them, quarantine people that were in the vicinity, but also keep the schools open. Phase 2, right now, I just wanted to let everybody know that we went from orange to yellow and then last week back to orange. We are going to want to see orange being in the orange steady for more than 1 week, for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. We will discuss this with our Department of Health and our nurse to make sure that we feel confident. Sorry about that. We want to go from orange to yellow, and we want to stay in yellow for a time period of at least 2 weeks, maybe longer, until we make any changes. We will be putting out some information as soon as possible. It will be coming out soon, within the next week or so, on what types of things we're looking to do. And one of the issues we have to deal with, if we do extend a day at all, would be dealing with lunches. So during lunch periods, the students have to take their masks off. When the students take their masks off, if there is a positive case, we do end up having to quarantine many staff members. That's the reason why we don't do it during snack. And one of the problems was we just didn't have enough staff. So we will continue to discuss this internally, and we will get out information. I plan on having some Q&A periods with the public and with the staff in the coming weeks or so. We will be running an outdoor basketball clinic and intramural games at Gardner in late March. We're working on the details right now. It's on the agenda for approval. And we want to try to give the kids some sense of normalcy, but we wanted to do it outside rather than inside. It looks like the students will have to wear masks for the majority of the time. We're still working out the details, but that stuff will be coming out soon to the families. As a matter of fact, we already started signing up the students, and we have over 50 children that are interested. And that's it for my report.
Thank you, Dr. Forte. Because we had the budget presentation, I just want to open up the floor to the board to have any questions answered that you might have about the presentation or Dr. Forte's report.
Hey, Laura, can I just ask a quick question? Dr. Forte, in regards to, and maybe Mrs. Gorowski can maybe talk about this too. I'm not sure who it would be, but in regards to the slide talking about the estimated tax impact for Denville K-8 school district, I know you mentioned the difference between our budget increase of 0.51% and the tax impact percent increase of 1.98%. But, and I know for the public, can we explain what that is? Because it took me a little while to grasp it, because obviously I was a little, shocked at that number. But I think Damaris did a really nice job explaining it to me, and I think it might be helpful for people to understand that our budget is increasing 0.51%, but the impact, because of the way the years and the fiscal year and the calendar year aligns, it's a little bit higher. So.
Would you like me to
Either one,
explain?
sorry.
Yeah,
Either one's
Damaris,
fine.
would you give us some info on that?
Absolutely. As Mr. Anderson explained, the tax levy increase for the 21-22 school year is 0.51%. That increase has to do with the fiscal year from July 1 through June 30th, and that is only on the tax levy. The town tax collection is based on a calendar year, January 1st through December 31st. That means that the both percentages would definitely be different because we are half a year behind collecting taxes. For example, in July, the tax levy is July through June. In July, we are still collecting taxes from the previous school year. That means that half of the 2021 taxes is collected in the 21-22 school year. And therefore, the percentages will always be different. If we have a high increase in the previous year, so the percentage on the lower level of the estimate tax impact will look higher. Vice versa, if we have a lower increase, then that number will be a little less. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for explaining it, Damaris. And I actually emailed Damaris earlier today with the same question. So we all need the reminder. So thank you.
You're welcome.
The other quick comment I would make is just in relation to the $2.1 million roof project at Lakeview. I think it's important to note that the way that school districts often, and I would almost say more often than not, fund roof projects and large buildings and grounds projects is typically through a large referendum. And Dr. Forte, if I'm, keep me honest on these comments. So it is unusual for a district to put money into reserves and then use that money to pay for larger projects like these. And $2.1 million is scratching the surface, right? Because we spent millions before to get to this point. So in fact, every year I can remember, and I'm actually going to be happy to not have to look at this for the next 10 years or so, or at least till I won't be on the board at that point. So at least for this is my last time on the board that I'll have to look at the roof map spreadsheet, where we looked at square footages and how much it was going to be and when that was scheduled to be replaced. This has been a large undertaking of a project, multi-year, and really required a lot of coordination between Dr. Forte and Damaris to ensure we had the money in reserves to pay for this project and that we had it scheduled so that we were not having leaky roofs and issues that would cause, which we did have a few, but really minimal compared to what could have happened. So I just want to give a lot of credit to the administration for coming to the end now of a huge undertaking of a project that did not require this district to go to referendum, which would have cost the taxpayers additional money to obviously have to fund the interest on a bond. So just for the note for the public, this is the last piece of roof that we will hopefully talk about. That's correct, Dr. Forte, right?
There is a small piece that might come due around 2029.
I won't be here, so that sounds great. But thank you. Honestly, it's been a long road of fixing roofs and that touches the, scratches the surface on the amount of other facilities projects that have been done. But it was a big one, and it's rare if you look at other districts. Many of the local districts nearby have all funded those projects through referendums and bonds, which, like I said, cost the taxpayers additional money. It may not come out of the operating budget, but it certainly comes out of their pockets as taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have something to say. I just want to thank the administration for all their hard work on this budget. That's getting a lot done in the district. It also has recognized the fiscal responsibility of the community of trying to keep the taxes low during this economic crisis for many families throughout the country. We did a great job. You look at this budget, we're getting a tremendous amount of things done. We still have our security officers, investing in technology, mental health, all these important things. But at the same time, we ratcheted back some of the spending there and having a minimal increase. So thank Dr. Forte and Damaris Gorowski, our business administrator, and Dr. Cullis and everybody else, the board, as we asked some very pointed and difficult questions and had some good debates throughout the process. So it's one of the better budgets I've seen in my many years here on the board. So great job, everybody.
Laura, I'm sorry. Can I just add a couple more quick comments? Sorry, guys. Number one, I want to remind everybody, no debt service for the district. So that's another feather in the cap of this district, I think, from a financial standpoint. And I would piggyback on Mr. Cass's comments. For the public's understanding, the last time that we saw a tax increase as low as this was the 2014-2015 budget year. So it's been, we've needed the money, and I think we've added money to our reserves where we can use those for certain projects. And this year we're using it appropriately to help offset the tax impact, because we're taking $2.8 million out of that account. I believe when I got on the board, there may not have been $2.8 million in that account. So we've come a long way in the ability to use that money appropriately on a year like this, where, as Mr. Cass appropriately said, the taxpayers need a break, and we'll have to build that back up in the future to get it to the appropriate spot so that we can continue to fund larger projects out of there as needed. But I am grateful for both the administration and the finance committee that worked extremely hard on ensuring that we are having the minimal tax impact to the taxpayers, as well as, obviously, most importantly, ensuring we're giving appropriate education and taking care of our buildings appropriately so we're not having major issues.
Thank you, Mr. Cass and Mr. Anderson.
No, I don't have any comments. Just to say thank you for everybody who put in the work.
James or Katie?
I agree. Thank you, everyone, for the hard work and doing a great job on this year's budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Wagner. I'd like to take this opportunity just to explain one little point to the public. The roofing project that Mr. Anderson talks about is actually going to be taken from reserves. It's almost like a savings account that the administration and district had been able to accumulate over the years. And so that's one of the reasons why the district was able to decrease the tax levy. So typically every year we're allowed to take up to 2%, if not more. But as Mr. Anderson and Mr. Cass had mentioned, as well as, Mr. Capello had requested that we really start early on this back in November, I think it was, that our mission was to try to keep the tax levy below as close to zero as we could. So I want to echo Mr. Anderson's thoughts, thanking the administration. It was, we did ask them to try to, what's the saying? make milk out of rocks, I guess. So, but yeah, they were able to find. That was weird, but they were able to find ways to get the tax levy as low as possible. So, thank you everyone for everyone's contribution. So.
I want to ask, Damaris, you might be the best person to answer this question. Are you able, for the public's benefit, to explain what our tax levy increase has been the past several years compared to our 0.5% increase this year?
I don't have the worksheet in front of me, but from the top of my head, within the last 5 years, it has been around 3% from 15, 16, 17. This has been the lowest tax year since I've been in Denville for the last 5 years. But it has been about 3%. Except for 1 year was a 2 point really low twos.
Yeah, and I'm looking at one of the budget binders right now, and exactly what you said, approximately 3% has been the average since 2015. So, I just wanted to highlight that to say that at a 0.5% tax levy increase, to get everything that we're getting out of this budget is amazing. So I just wanted to echo thanks to the administration as well as the finance committee also. Great job, guys.
One last comment, Laura. It's worth noting that last year we took on an additional building that we are renting across the street from here for Riverview Annex that we are renting from St. Mary's Parish. That building, that way that lease was designed was actually increasing the amount due to some of the repairs and facilities work that we did in the building initially to help offset that. So that ramps up. So it adds to the credit that we should be giving to the administration for being able to deliver on a lower increase when we have additional, additional expenses that are coming in this year that were already kind of allocated for the building.
Okay, I think we've all said our piece. So congratulations to the administration. And now we will move on to letter G, Assistant Superintendent's comments.
Good evening. I just wanted to mention a program that we are planning for this summer. So we have been talking about this program since last summer, and we did budget money for an extended learning academy. We are fortunate to also receive an additional $145,000 grant for learning loss, or to address learning loss. So we're able to really expand the program to service between 200 and 300 students. So this program will run concurrently with our extended school year, but it will target some of our students that are in the general education and do not have general education program and do not have an IEP. So it's really similar programs, but different funding sources. They will both run from June 28th through August 5th, Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 11:30. And we'll really target math and ELA. And then we have some woodworking in there as well, which is just from an additional grant to give students an opportunity to do some hands-on learning between their math work and their language arts work. We will continue with our paid enrichment program as well, but we're going to schedule the day so that it runs after the morning program. So if parents were enrolling their students in the academic portion from 8:30 to 11:30, and if they chose to continue the day, that we would keep the students there, have outdoor lunch, and then the enrichment would run from noon to 3. So that would give parents an opportunity to have their students in programs for a full day, Monday through Thursday, if they chose to pay for that additional enrichment in the afternoon. We will look at the benchmark assessments that we have been taking throughout this year to determine the level of learning loss, and then students will be recommended based upon that learning loss. And then additionally, if parents would like to elect to participate as well, we will try to have as many openings as possible. And this will go for our current kindergartners through our current 7th graders. This program will be offered, and more will be coming out about that. We also are starting to collect back our books as we're inventorying our libraries. Just a shout out to everyone, all the public out there. We are looking to recall a lot of our books that went home a year ago in March and have not been returned yet. So we are going to start putting out all calls to try to get those books back into our buildings because we really do want, it's been a whole year, and this is the time that we're now looking for those books that went home last spring and now we need them again. So if you have books, school books in your house, we're looking to return those back to the building. So thank you. This concludes the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cullis. Now we are at the Business Administrator's comments, letter H.
I want to remind the board that the financial disclosure with the school ethics was emailed to you guys last week. Please complete before April 30th, which is the hard deadline. And if you do have any questions, please reach out to me. This year was a little different than in the past, and it might create some confusions, but please reach out if you do have any questions. I do also want to thank the Finance and Operation Committee. They dedicated a lot of time discussing budget, guiding us and giving us their input. And like Mr. Cass mentioned before, it was a debate between both of us, all of us, but it was a healthy debate. And we did accomplish a lot, but the committee really put in a great amount of time and effort, energy, and is commendable, and as well as the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Damaris. Okay, it is 8:09, and at this time, we're going to open up the meeting for our first public comment section. You'll see if you're following along in the agenda, it says agenda items only. We're going to open it up to any comments or concerns that you have. So most of you are virtual. So if you'd like to address the board, please type your name and address for the record into the chat or the comment section, and you will be called upon.
Damaris, while we're waiting for the public comments section, this is Dave Luer. I got here about 7:38.
Thank you, Mr. Luer.
Mrs. Wagner, it looks like we do have one who wishes to make a comment. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wagner.
What's that, James?
There are two individuals that have typed in their name and address in the chat room.
Thank you. Okay, so in the chat, we see Allison Ortega. Mrs. Ortega, if you would unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question or your comment. You can also type it if that is easier.
Good evening. I'm just wondering, now that the weather is getting warmer, if there was some sort of an option where we could have the classes for lunch outside, especially for IUP kids, we find it very important that they should be in school for longer. And if the problem is with taking the masks off to eat lunch, could there be some kind of option where we could do that outside now that maybe the next few weeks it's going to be warm enough to do so?
Dr. Forte, you want to take that question?
We're definitely considering options to increase the length of the in-person instruction. And like we discussed before, we will be getting information as soon as possible to the public on what our plan is. But the things that you're bringing up are considerations. And we do, like we said before, we really like to get out of the orange back into the yellow prior to working on some of these things. But everything's open. We're going to talk about it, and we will have information out soon.
So just to reiterate what Dr. Forte had mentioned in his comments, the district administration is looking at and has talked to the local board of health to come to the decision that at least 2 weeks in the yellow before any changes are made to the in-person instruction schedule.
Yeah, at least 2 weeks.
Okay, who's next? Mrs. Stiers, go ahead and unmute yourself or type your comment in the chat.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, because I have headphones on. I just wanted to make a comment. I know you guys are going to start getting a lot of pressure about moving on to the next phase. And meanwhile, thank you very much. I think you guys have handled everything great. I have a friend in a district who, in their district, they're using face masks to eat lunch in the classroom. And I'm sure you're talking to other districts and are aware of these ideas, or face shields, I mean. But I just wanted to share that with you guys as an option, especially if you do decide to open up for outdoor lunch on days when there's inclement weather. It's just something that I think to consider as part of that phase, because then they can take their masks off and stay at their desks and be within the classroom. I know logistically it's very difficult for spacing issues I know at least Riverview as far as getting all these kids to eat lunch. So I just wanted to comment on that and share what I had heard for you guys to consider when you start looking into your next phase. And that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We always appreciate comments and any input that the public wants to share with us. Okay, I don't see any more names in the chat right now. There will be a second open public comment section at the end of the meeting. So now it is 8:15 and I am going to close the public section comment and move on with old business. Mr. Capello, would you mind, would you mind taking us through old business? No action to be taken?
Sure, I'd be happy to. At the next meeting, we will be reviewing and voting on items A, B, and C under old business. These include the reports from February 2021 of the Treasurer of School Monies and the Board Secretary. We also will have education reports, report of student enrollment, and report of the Health Office for February 2021, and the minutes from our work session meeting February 8th, 2021, and our regular session meeting February 22nd, 2021.
Thank you. And now new business action to be taken. Mr. Anderson, would you take us through personnel, please?
Sure. If there are no objections, I'd like to move under 4 new business, A, personnel items 1 through 4 as a block. Please note the addition of item 1E on the addendum to the agenda. These items include new hires, resignations, retirements, employee leaves, extra pay, salary adjustments, as well as several leave of absences.
I just have to make a quick comment about the addendum. The word step, it's the same amount, but just to be official, the correct step is B1. It's the exact same amount. It's just not A4, it's B1.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Damaris, does Mr. Anderson need to amend his motion with the change noted in the
No.
addendum?
No, Mr. Kim seconded. We are good.
Thank you.
I would obviously like to make a comment on item 1D. Mrs. Baisley has been the principal at Lakeview for my kids' entire 7 years so far in this district, and I can't be more excited for her. But I want to thank her for the incredible job she has done. You walk into an elementary school building as a parent, not having any clue as to what you need to do. And she welcomes every parent that walks in that building in a warm way, but also a nurturing and caring way. And she just has an unbelievable way of handling any issues that come up. She literally called my wife tonight at 5 o'clock about an issue. So she has been an incredible principal, somebody who I have admired and continue to admire, and thank her for her incredible service to this district. The children that have been blessed to have her as a principal are better off for it, and our parents have been very lucky over many years to have her in the district. And I wish her the absolute best in her retirement and say thank you.
I just want to echo what Mr. Anderson said. My children have been at Lakeview for a number of years. Mrs. Baisley has definitely not only made the students feel like the building is their second home, but also the parents. I feel very comfortable walking into Lakeview, as I know any parent within the building does. And she makes us feel like our opinion matters, and what we do working with the administration and the teachers is important. So Mrs. Baisley, thank you. You will be missed, but I hope you have many new adventures on your retirement.
And I will also like to say a few words about Mrs. Baisley. She is the most amazing principal, and you will never meet someone of higher integrity than Beth Baisley. And she has been with the district as a teacher and administrator for, I believe, 29 years. So she really has dedicated her life to Lakeview School in every capacity that could be. So I know by all of us, she will be greatly missed. Although she promises she's not going far. She's already thinking about what's her next challenge?
I feel the same way. It's kind of bittersweet. We're happy for her, but we are going to miss her. Coming into the district as a superintendent 7 years ago, she was a huge help for me to get to know the players in the town. And even though I lived in town, I wasn't involved in the schools as much, and just having some time with Mrs. Baisley to help me understand what was going on and the things that we needed to fix, things that were going great. And can't say enough about her, and I agree with what you said, Sandy, too. Her integrity is amazing. So congratulations to Mrs. Baisley.
I have one thing to add. Mrs. Baisley gets a lot of accolades for a lot of different things, but one of the key things that's happened at that school is the Veterans Day celebration, which was a community event attended by many veterans and their families. A phenomenal celebration of the bravery and heroism of our veterans. And she's to be commended, along with a lot of other people there, though, that making sure that tradition has continued for many, many years. And I look forward to this coming November, where we can be back there again in person.
Hey, Laura, real quickly, I just want to tell two quick Miss Baisley stories. So first of all, just to show the type of person she is, my wife had emailed Mrs. Baisley and actually Mr. Scala over the weekend, assuming obviously that there would be no response until Monday, understandably. Well, Saturday evening, she picks up the phone and calls the house. So that's the type of person she is. The flip side of Mrs. Baisley is I walked into Lakeview one time to pick up one of my kids who was sick at the nurse's office a couple years ago. And I walked in the office and, you know, you get the call that your kid is sick. The first thing you do is jump in the car and run to go pick him up. I left the house without my wallet and therefore didn't have my license to scan. And she made me stand in the office while they sent someone down to go get my kid, which is our security protocol, which was absolutely appropriate. But I just love the fact that she could be so caring to care about people, but also is so like Dr. Cullis said, her integrity. She knew the right thing to do, and she will put her foot down when she needs to. I just think it was a great mix of perfect elementary school principal. So just two quick stories. That's all.
So I just want to clarify, in case you're not looking at the agenda, Mrs. Baisley is retiring July 1st. So she will be with us for the remainder of this school year in case we've sent anyone into a panic. We still have her for the rest of this school year.
Or longer if we vote no.
Can we stop her if we vote no? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Luer,
Yes.
thank you, Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mrs. Gould,
Yes.
Mrs. Wagner.
Yes. Okay, and now we are on letter B, instruction and programming. Mrs. Gould, would you mind moving us through that, please?
Gladly. If there are no objections, I move to approve Resolution 1, Item 1, under Instruction and Programming, items A through E. These are several different workshops with expenses for the Teachers College Summer Reading Institute, Teachers College Summer Writing Institute, Teachers College Summer Phonics Institute, and Teachers College Summer Equity Institute, and Teachers College Summer Black History Institute. Black History is American History. I want to note that you'll see on here, it states staff to attend virtually upon acceptance. During our IMP meeting, Dr. Cullis explained that the turnaround time, if they are accepted, till when they have to send the check-in is very brief. And it's a lengthy application process. So we're pre-approving them. And if they do get accepted to the program, then they will be going. Obviously, if they don't get accepted, the money would not be spent. I believe I explained that correctly. Thanks.
I'll
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to say Mr. Capello. Questions,
you.
comments?
Just to clarify, there should be a voting section there, right? Because we're voting under B, not before we get to C, correct?
That is correct. Our roll call, we're missing the roll call, but there is a voting, yes.
Got it.
Okay.
I'll also note items A through C are Title I funds. Items D and E, I believe, are not.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mrs. Gould. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Luer,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mrs. Gould,
Yes.
Mrs. Wagner.
Yes. Okay, moving on to finance. Mr. Thank you for that suggestion. We are going to go a little bit out of order. We are going to skip over finance right now and come back to it. We are going to go to operations, letter D, and Mr. Cass, if you could move us through that, please.
Under operations, I'd like to move that the board approve the plan to replace the HVAC at the Riverview All-Purpose Room and Gym and include air conditioning in the project.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Comments, questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I have to tell you, this is one of the more difficult decisions I've had to make as a board member. In part because I feel there's a strong need for it, but I've also wrestled with the fact that in a year where, especially I was the one who kind of started the ball rolling on taxpayer relief and trying to trim our budget as much as possible, spending money for air conditioning in a space that it could be argued has some educational benefit. It's difficult when you balance that against the idea that we have classrooms, quite a few classrooms across the district that are not air conditioned, where our kids spend the vast majority of their day. So I have wrestled with this. I have gone back and forth on whether I would support it or not. I, at the last meeting, said I felt strongly that we should try to air condition all of the rooms in the district first before we tackled this, but I understand that there's a timing issue here, that if we are going to go ahead and replace the HV part of the system and not do the AC, we would basically be doubling the expense down the road if another board or another administration decided that it was necessary. So all of that is my way of saying that I am very conflicted about this. I have come down on the idea that I'm going to reluctantly support it. Not totally happy about it. It is a lot of money. It's a very significant chunk of our reserves going forward. I do feel strongly that we should absolutely commit tonight to air condition the rest of the rooms in the district as part of our plan moving forward. The educational benefit to our students, I think, is this has brought that into focus for me. So with that in mind, I am going to support this.
Mrs. Wagner, if I may follow up.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Capello, for explaining your thoughts. As I mentioned during our last board meeting, my position, let me help you make this decision easier by giving you a few more points. Over the 3 years that I've been a board member, one of the major messages that I've heard from everyone in the board as well as the administration, that we do not accept substandard spaces or substandard upgrades, if you will. And so for me, that is sort of the mantra that I'm going to be following, basically because, yeah, as you mentioned so eloquently, the board in the future will have to make that decision if we do not approve it tonight, to basically pay for this upgrade by doubling the cost, right, as you had said. So for me, that is ultimately an easy decision. We would be, if we voted against the air conditioning, then we would be sort of conceding with upgrading the space to a substandard level. I want to thank the administration for putting together the report that they presented us during the committee meetings that essentially outlines the cost of what it would take to upgrade the rest of the schools. And from my perspective as chair of finance committee, I think that this is a project that we could take on over the next 2 years if that's what the board wants to do as well. And I agree with you, Mr. Capello, that we should definitely make it a priority to try to upgrade the spaces, the classrooms, and everything else, so that their environment for learning is an optimal one. So from that perspective, it almost makes this decision that much easier because we will still have to upgrade the electrical systems in Riverview. So to me, that is a cost that has to be done. Again, using the substandard argument, as well as the fact that if we do wish to upgrade the rest of Riverview with air conditioning, we have to deal with the electrical anyway. And that to me summarizes why for me tonight, it will be a very easy decision to go ahead and approve this air conditioning resolution. So thanks for everyone for listening. Thank you.
If I may follow up, Mr. Kim? I wanted to say there's a lot of public here tonight, and they may have missed the last meeting. So I wanted to sum up for them, if hopefully I get this right. The heating and ventilation has to be replaced in the school. At this time, we're talking about whether or not to also add air conditioning, because if we replace the heating and venting system and we don't replace the air conditioning, to come in later, you're going to have to tear out the system to rebuild it. So it's going to be more money down the road. But this also requires an upgrade to the electrical system, which, eventually, if we're going to air condition the whole building, it would be needed anyway. So it's not a question of, let's randomly throw a lot of money at one room and air condition this one room and it's not fair to anybody else in the district. That's not the case. They have to do the work. This has to be fixed for just heating and ventilation purposes, which is critical. And at our last meeting, if anyone wasn't present, you could go back on YouTube and watch, but the principal explained how kids are get physically sick. I always assumed kids handle the heat better, I want the air conditioning personally, but they run around in the summer and don't seem to be as affected usually by it. But when she explained in detail, about passing out and fainting or vomiting from heat, it makes this a no-brainer for me. It's not a question of, randomly just upgrading this. It's, if we don't do this now, we won't want to do it for 20 years or so until the whole new system needs to be replaced. So it's a lot, but I might feel differently if this had to be like a referendum or a loan situation, but this is what our reserves are for. And we're not just looking to spend money, but I think that if we didn't do this now, the district would really regret it in the next 20 years. My career deals with climate change and ocean levels, but temperatures are rising as well. Not just the average temperature, and it's rising more in the north of the United States than the south. I was just looking up some information on this today. It's not just the average or highest temperature in the summer, but more frequent, heat wave, serious weather events. So while I obviously want to see, it'd be great to have all the classrooms air conditioned, it's not a issue of prioritizing one over the other right now. It's a matter of this needs to be fixed now for heating and ventilation. And so it's the right time to do it, I think. That's it for now.
Thank you, Mrs. Gould. I'm going to take the opportunity to piggyback on that and just explain to the public, we're talking about an additional to air condition this one large space, not the entire building, but this one large space at Riverview, an additional $250,000. For me, it has also been a very difficult decision. And I think a few reasons, but the one that sticks out the most is because last meeting, when the principal came on and explained some of the things that were going on with the students, I'd like to say first that I think we can do a better job communicating these concerns. I was shocked, to say the least, to hear that we have had students in the district getting sick and or passing out because of temperatures in the building. To my knowledge, that hasn't been brought to the board's attention prior to this. So I urge our entire administration to communicate these things with us in a more timely manner. I think that Mrs. T highlighted the need for air conditioning, not only in a large space, but when she was asked at the meeting if you had to choose one or the other, her part of her response was, of course, she would want air conditioning in the classroom. So I think that I agree. This is something that we should do right, and we should spend the $250,000 to air condition the large space. With that being said, I think that it's not just about the $250,000. I think the board, in making this one improvement a priority, is stating that we want air conditioning throughout the district, not only in this large space. Valley View has a large space. It's going to need to be a large space in Lakeview, but certainly every classroom. So we have a total, and thank you, Dr. Forte, for putting together the handout that you did for the board. And he outlines there's 56 classrooms in the district throughout the 3 buildings that still remain unair conditioned. With the quote of $2,500 a room, we're talking about $140,000 extra. I understand that we can't do all of Lakeview's 22 rooms. Dr. Forte, do you happen to know how many rooms we could do at Lakeview with the current electrical system?
It would depend on the location of the room, but it looks like somewhere around 5 to 10. They're not sure exactly, but they feel like about 5 to 10 without it. So that's why we could do a few of them this summer and then do the electrical upgrade the following summer.
My next question is, do you know if there's any benefit to doing the electrical upgrade at Riverview and Lakeview? And is there some type of discount because we would have 2 projects instead of just the smaller one at Riverview?
It didn't really work out that way last year when we did it. It wasn't like, it didn't come out to a big difference. As a matter of fact, we got 2 different contractors because they gave us better quotes. So it didn't really make a difference. Remember, we did some of the electrical upgrades last year. We did like phase 1. This would be phase 2 of the electrical upgrades.
So while I am going to support this for now, I would echo Mr. Capello's sentiments that we consider putting all air conditioning units in Valley View and Riverview. We'll be able to do that with the electrical upgrade. And then either, and this is up for a board discussion certainly, but either replace the or upgrade the electrical system at Lakeview this year and put in the air conditioning units that are needed to make it those 22 rooms air conditioned, or do as many as we can this year and then make that the priority for the following year.
We do have capacity issues I want to bring up too. So we remember we're doing a large roofing project. We're going to do the HVAC. Last year when this was on the agenda, the board suggested that we did not do it last year because we were doing the annex. And I thought that was a good idea. But the reason was for capacity issues, capacity of our staff to get things done. So I think I would stick with what I said before. We would do the electrical upgrade at Riverview, do the all-purpose room HVAC with the air conditioning, add 5 or so air conditioners to the main building at Riverview, add between 5 and 10 at Valley View and 5 to 10 at Lakeview. And then the following year, do the upgrades at Lakeview. For people that weren't aware, 2019, we did the electrical upgrade at Valley View. That was kind of something that we needed to do quickly. So we did that. But these are all things that have been discussed for the past few years as some of these upgrades.
So I just want to say that in response to that, Dr. Forte, at Valley View, you note there's 21 rooms that are without air conditioning, and at Riverview, there's 13. If you take those 2 and multiply it by 2,500, we're talking about, we're talking about $85,000, and then the 5 or 10 at Lakeview. I think that, and I can certainly understand not taking on the large project at Lakeview upgrading the system, but I think that after listening to the principal of Riverview last week or last board meeting talk about the conditions that our students are sitting through, I think that I would ask the board to consider upgrading or adding the AC units to the individual classrooms, as many as our electricity can hold in all the buildings this year.
Laura, may I make a comment? Steve, just real quick, Lakeview, APR, and gym. I know we didn't get a quote on how much we think those would cost. When did we replace the HV portion of those?
Those are about, I'm not sure 100%, Mike, but I think to answer the first part of your question, what we think it's going to be is the kind of like the Valley View situation, because it's not going to be a ductwork issue. That was the big difference at Valley View. I can't guarantee that, but that's what we think it is. And my report that I have on all of our HVAC is that unit is operational, and there's no real issues with it. So I don't know when it was put in there. I just know that it's in good working condition.
Okay. And, I think my feelings on this project are pretty similar to Mr. Capello and Mrs. Wagner's kind of feelings on it. I have been very torn on this. And I think spending $250,000 or $350,000 on a project should make us really torn, especially since we had to make a quick decision, in my opinion. We often spend, and we have spent endless hours debating on money here. And how to spend it appropriately. And this high number, we should and have spent a lot of time talking about it. And in this chamber, as well as in committee meetings, as well as individual conversations, as well as just a lot of conversation about it. And I think the other part of this everybody needs to remember is this started off with an $80,000 addition to the Riverview Gym HV project, right? To add air conditioning to one large space in the district. I'm sorry, correct, Valley View. The Valley View Gymnasium needed to have the heating and ventilation replaced. We added air conditioning at an additional $80,000 cost. That's what Dr. Forte was referring to when we were talking about the Lakeview large spaces. So that $80,000 project is now turning into about a $1.5 million ballpark project, somewhere in that ballpark, 1.2, 1.5. I mean, somewhere, we don't know exact numbers. Including in that is $325,000 in electrical upgrades, as well as, like we talked about, air conditioning units. There's going to be additional cost for replacement of air conditioning units as they break. There's going to be additional cost for running of the air conditioning units. Talking about, we clearly don't have a large amount of maintenance and custodial staff. Now we're going to have them troubleshooting air conditioning not working. There was a lot of discussion actually a few years ago about how we thought window air conditioners were a really bad idea because we didn't have the staff to support them, and it was kind of a substandard way of air conditioning buildings. So it's a $250,000 question today that really jumps to $1.2 million at a minimum, probably, obviously more than that, because that doesn't include the Lakeview, APR, and gym. And for the public, just so they know what I'm looking at right now on the computer here is a document that we received from Dr. Forte, just a lot of the questions we asked last meeting, as well as listing out how many air conditioning units in classrooms for each of the 3 buildings, as well as many of the larger rooms. I would highly suggest that if we think it was this important, that the Lakeview Gym and the Lakeview APR are prioritized over the Lakeview cafeteria if we decide to do the cafeteria at any point, because I think that that's probably the least impactful location of any of our rooms. The other question is, Dr. Forte, what about the Valley View cafeteria? I didn't see that on here.
The Valley View cafeteria has air conditioning.
Is that fed by the gym?
No, it's a
Separate?
unit that's been there before.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. So I'm torn on it. I agree with Laura's comments and statements about Mrs. Theodoropoulos speaking to us about the impact. I don't think we've ever heard that a student had passed out or physically became ill beyond just not feeling well from heat. Obviously, that's very impactful. It's a $1.2 million project that we're basically deciding to go down that road tonight if we decide to go in that direction. I do feel that this will have benefit for the students. I do think that we are going to head down the road of beyond just air conditioning this one additional room, of air conditioning every single room in the district. I do think that will have benefit for the students. So that is why I will be supporting it tonight, but I will tell you that it did not come without a lot of debate in my head and a lot of questions and a lot of thought. And I do sincerely appreciate Dr. Forte and everybody that was able to put this information together on short order. I know it was an opportunistic opportunity to take advantage of getting air conditioning in that room, but everybody should understand that we're going down the road of air conditioning the 3 entire buildings practically, right? I know we've got air conditioning already, but finishing the air conditioning project for $1.2 million, and one room is going to cost us $250,000. That's why it's so much of a question in my mind, and that's why there was so much debate. And I appreciate that we had the open debate about it, because that's what our job is. Our job is to make sure that we're spending every dollar appropriately that we get from the taxpayer. We just talked about the budget earlier in the meeting, and this is another point that we do not take for granted and just spend money haphazardly in this district. And I appreciate the conversation from the administration. I appreciate the conversation from the other board members. And I think that we are heading down a good road here. But I do appreciate that we did our due diligence to make sure that it was the right thing to do for the students.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Dr. Forte, I just want to clarify or ask a question, I guess. The 2,500, is that for per window unit? Is that with our staff dedicating that line, or is that with an electrician coming in?
So the process is we purchase the units, we hire an electrician to run a dedicated line to it, not add electric, just run a line, and then our people install them. There's a little bit of work to do in installing. It's not like your house. You have to take the whole window out, and then you have to block it out, and then you have to install it. So it takes them a little bit of time to do it, and they have to make sure it looks okay and it's safe.
Does anybody have any other comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Lure,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mrs. Gould,
Yes.
Mrs. Wagner.
Yes. Okay, so now we are going to go backwards in the agenda to letter C under finance. Mr. Kim, would you move us through that, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Tonight, I'd like to motion that we approve the tentative budget for the 21-22 school year using the state aid figures, and the secretary of the Board of Education will be authorized to submit the executive county superintendent to the executive county superintendent for approval in accordance with NJSA 18A 7F-5 and 18A 7F-6. Where the general funds will amount to $37,998,856, special revenue fund of $343,570, and the totaling $38,342,426. Be it further resolved that there should be raised for taxes for general funds of $32,489,754 for the ensuing school year. Mrs. Wagner, should I read this entire resolution, or should I just summarize it accordingly?
This is one that we typically read verbatim.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So, be it further resolved that there should be raised for taxes. I apologize, I read that already. And to advertise said tentative budget in the Daily Record in accordance with the form suggested by the New Jersey Department of Education and according to law, and a public hearing on the budget for the 21-22 school year will be held at 1 St. Mary's Place, Denville, on April 26 at 7:30 p.m. Be it further resolved that the budget includes the use of maintenance reserve withdrawal of $200,000 to assist in funding building repairs and equipment district-wide. These improvements and upgrade will be completed by the end of fiscal year 21-22. Be it further resolved that the budget includes the use of capital reserve withdrawal of $2,925,125 to assist with the Lakeview Elementary School roof replacement, to assist with the Riverview Elementary School HVAC upgrade, the security project 911 Inform, and the interior door project in order to comply with the building code. These improvements and upgrades will be completed by the end of fiscal year 21-22. Whereas the Denville Board of Education recognizes school staff and board members will incur travel expenses related to and within the scope of their current responsibilities, and for the travel that promotes the delivery of instruction or furthers the efficient operation of the school district. And whereas New Jersey AC 6A 23B 1.1 requires board members to receive approval of these expenses by a majority of the full voting membership of the board, and the staff members to receive prior approval of these expenses by the superintendent of schools and a majority of the full voting membership of the board. And whereas the Board of Education may establish for regular district business travel only an annual school year threshold of $150 per event, where prior board approval shall not be required unless this event threshold for staff members is exceeded during July 1st through June 30th. And whereas pursuant to NJAC 6A 23A 7.3, a Board of Education must establish a maximum dollar limit for travel expenditure, as defined in NJAC 6A 23A 7.1. And therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Denville approved to establish a maximum travel expenditure amount of $41,800 for the 21-22 school year. The maximum travel expenditure amount for the 2021 school year is $52,800, of which $14,712 has been spent, and $26,527 is encumbered to date. Be it further resolved, the Board of Education approve a maximum annual expenditure for professional services in accordance with NJAC 6A 23A 5.21, auditor amount of $32,500, the attorney amount of $80,000, and the architect amount of $5,000.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lohr. Comments, questions? And thank you, Mr. Kim, for reading all of that.
My apologies for being a little flustered earlier. So.
Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Cass,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Lohr,
Yes.
Mr. Kim,
Yes.
Mrs. Gould,
Yes.
Mrs. Wagner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now, am I right that we are moving on to policy revisions?
No action.
Thank you. So I was wrong. We are now moving on to new business, no action to be taken. Mr. Anderson, would you move us through personnel, please?
Sure. At the next meeting, myself or someone else will be moving personnel items under A 1 through 4, include several movement of personnel items, cash out of vacations, fill in for substitute caller, yearbook advisor, permanent sub teacher, move across the guide, complete CST evaluations, as well as provide ABA consultation services, as well as several other personnel items as listed.
Thank you. Now we are on to policy revisions. We have one policy that I'll go ahead and read. At the next meeting, someone will be motioning for the second reading and adoption of the discipline policy P4150. And nothing.
Under number 2 for finance.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Kim, would you move us through finance for the next meeting?
Sure. During the next meeting, I'll be motioning to approve the checks under 1 when they become available, and under number 2, the approval of the Plan Connect as a third-party administrator for the 403B and 457B for the district at no cost to the district.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry. Damaris, is this the same company we've used as the administrator for our TPA accounts?
This is not the same company. Currently, we are managing the plant with in-house. This company will be managing the 403 plans and TPAF for the district at no cost to the district. These brokers will be, and the company where the money is sent to, they are the one paying the fees.
I'm sorry, who was it? That was the next question I was going to ask. They got to get paid somehow. So
Yes, let's say Equitable, Lincoln Investment, those companies, those investment companies where the funds are sent to, those companies will be paying the fees to the administrative plan.
okay, would we expect our end users that are investing to have to burden that cost eventually?
Not at all. No, their investment is intact.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Cass, would you move us through operations for the next meeting?
At the next meeting, I'm going to ask that the board approve the following programs to use school facilities pending completion of district policy requirements. We have the Denville Township Recreation Summer Plus program at Valley View School, the Head First Camps, New York Yankees baseball camp at Riverview School, and the Pro Sports Experience Camp, NFL football at Riverview School. I should add too that we make a little bit of money on these too for use of the facilities.
Yes, we do.
That's great.
It's nice to see that we are planning for the Summer Plus program to continue this year, despite COVID. Okay, we are at good of the cause for committee reports, correspondence, discussion items. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a Lakeview PTA update. So Lakeview's PTA put together the virtual talent show at the end of February, which was a wonderful job was done by everyone. They're looking to hold a virtual Tricky Tray to replace the regular in-person Tricky Tray that is their largest fundraiser for the year. So that is scheduled for April 15th. It's going to be virtual and more details will be coming out, but it's going to be like a murder mystery, guess who done it? So April 15th, save that date. And the next PTA meeting is April 10th, this week at 7 p.m. virtual.
I forgot to mention something in my report, so I might as well bring it up now. On March 25th, we are going to do a health and wellness day. And we're still working on the details, but we have put out a message to the public so everybody understands. Instead of having the typical afternoon virtual, there'll be all these different activities together. Some things done in cooperation with local businesses, with the YMCA, with our municipal library. And the the planning phase is still going. It was kind of started off as it was going to be something smaller, and it's growing into something bigger, which I think is good, and including more people. And we'll have information out as soon as possible with the actual activities.
Can I ask, am I forgetting, did we talk about our virtual program of Read Across America at all in this meeting or last meeting?
No, we didn't mention it today. No. Dr. Cullis, do you want to give a little report on that?
I think like similarly to past years, we had guest readers, and this year it was virtual. So we had recorded readers that were presented in classrooms. And just knowing that since 2017, the shift from just Dr. Seuss has switched to reading all sorts of material, and diverse authors. So we do a celebration of Dr. Seuss as well as all other forms of reading. So it's just really about promoting positive reading. And that was done in different ways. Some of it was dressing up and having spirit days around the reading, as well as encouraging them to read from different diverse authors, and also the recorded read alouds. So a variety of activities, but all virtual.
Mrs. Wagner, if I may. The last week there was, or the end of February, there was a coping with COVID seminar that the administration or the district had put together. I was unable to attend because I had a prior engagement. Could somebody talk about how that went and feedback, and what kind of feedback you were able to get?
I was able to attend if you'd like.
Yes, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. It was very good. I believe they sent out the slideshow, which I might be able to share. If I can find that in my emails, I will send to you. It was really good. I attended only the parents one. They also had two seminars for students from 3rd grade through 8th grade, divided into 2 different age groups. But it was really good to hear some of their information and how to deal with the pressure and stress through this time. My kid's a little bit younger, so he doesn't feel the stress that older students might feel. He's happy to be home and just doesn't want to do school. But it had a lot of helpful information and a lot of helpful links. That's why I would like to share it, or if anyone else has it to distribute to the board, it'd be great. A lot of places to go to, and it was run by I believe the counselors for both Lakeview and Valley View. I think I'm sorry, I forget. One was from Lakeview, and I'm not sure the other one. I wasn't familiar with them because it wasn't. We attend Riverview, but they're very friendly and easy to listen to and get the information from, and welcomed contacting them outside of the seminar, even if you're in a different school. So it was really good, and it was a shame they couldn't record it to share, but I understand why they couldn't do that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry I missed it, but I appreciate the administration putting that together for the public, because I know that that's probably a much needed topic of discussion during these times. So thank you.
Let me just jump in for a minute. The staff members were the Lakeview counselors. There's a new part of our COVID website. If you click on the COVID website and you go to Coping with COVID, under on the website on the left-hand side, you'll see that PowerPoint presentation. We're also looking to do, we're going to do it again, the same presentation. It'll come up soon. We'll have the information out. We felt like it was important to give another opportunity for other parents to do it. I think we're going to do it. We're going to do a little later too, I think, give the people, it might be a little bit better for them, maybe around 7 or so. There'll be information coming out soon about that.
I have a few things. Dr. Forte, would you mind, I know that if the legislature recently made some updates to the laws surrounding marijuana usage. And Dr. Forte and I had a discussion about how that affects, if at all, affects those type of activities within and on our buildings, at our building. So I just wanted you to share with the public what you discussed with our attorney.
So there's a new legislation with the marijuana law, and we were given some other advice about it. One of the things that came up was somehow they added in alcohol too. So students now, I think this is really important for parents to know. Students now, if they're found drinking or in possession or smoking marijuana in any way, the police for the first time cannot inform the parents. As a matter of fact, if they don't follow the rule, the police can be charged with a crime for informing the parents. I found that very disturbing. I had some conversations with some people. I think that the fact that there's some kind of way that they're going to tell us that you can't inform a parent. I totally understand not putting people into the criminal justice system. That makes sense, but not telling the parent doesn't make sense to me. But
Dr.
I really think,
I'm sorry, I normally wouldn't interrupt, but I was very concerned about this too, but I found a piece of information that I think is critical. The legislation did state that, but there's currently another proposed legislation to correct it. It was supposed to be 18 to 21-year-olds. They meant underage, under 21 they would not notify the parents, but somehow it accidentally, with the way it was written, went everybody under around 21 or 18. But they were targeting the 18 to 21-year-old age range. They are underage for use of both marijuana and alcohol. But that age range, the parents upon first offense would not be notified. That's my understanding. There's new bill to correct this, and that's just my understanding of the situation. But it's been a common misconception, and I just wanted to share that. I learned that this past week.
well, I was going to get to that. There is, I don't know about a misconception. I'm not sure if you know something I don't know, but we were given a directive and it had all the information in it. So I don't know if it was a misconception or if there's now a bill that's going to correct some of those things. But that's what I read today, was that there will be a bill that's going to make some changes to that new law. So I think the important part is for everybody to understand is that for right now, parents wouldn't be notified if their child was found in possession of marijuana or alcohol, and also the police would not be investigating this type of stuff on our property. We would have to do searches and things like that. Obviously, if it's outright though, like if there's actually if they actually see the material, that's a different story. But they wouldn't be able to search anybody or anything like that just because of what they would use before. Maybe you have a feeling that the student was under the influence, but now it would have to be more in the open.
And Dr. Forte, in your discussions, you did confirm that there's no legislation currently that restricts the school district from notifying parents of code of conduct violations that might relate to drugs or alcohol, correct?
That's correct. The other issue that we're not sure about yet, we're waiting for clarification, is whether or not we're permitted to inform the police. Because we do sign the memorandum of agreement that actually requires us to inform the police. So we're kind of stuck in this little area that we're not sure how to go about it right now.
So actually, if I may have a little bit of information to add to the mix here. I was going to give an update on the school board's legislative committee meeting this weekend. We actually were lucky enough to have Vin Gopal be the speaker. He is a state assembly member, and he actually is co-authoring the bill to correct, I believe, the mistake that was made. So the way he presented it to us on Saturday's meeting was, this was a mistake. He felt like a bonehead that they missed this, that this was an oversight. Yeah, I think you're right, Dr. Forte. The bill does say it now, but it was a mistake. So not necessarily misconception, but a mistake in the bill that they're actively trying to correct. So I do think there'll be clarity on this fairly soon. And I
That was what I was aware of too. So it's good. It's great that, I mean,
Yeah.
they're coming out that fast to try to correct it.
Yeah, like I said, Saturday, that was one of the first things he made in his comments to us. So so again, I think this will all hopefully settle out pretty quickly. If you don't mind, I can continue. So a few other things. I sent out an update about some legislative matters that affect us. The legislature has looking to grant QSAC relief to districts to give us more time to comply with QSAC this year, obviously because of the pandemic. Also school audit delay that would push back the deadline for school audit to January 31st. So giving us more time. There's also some bills having to do with more inclusiveness in the curriculum, diversity and inclusion in instruction, increasing hiring of minority and opportunities for minority teachers and staff. As you know, the Governor Murphy announced his budget proposal. He is adding back in the formula funding, like Dr. Forte mentioned before. He would basically be bringing us back on track to reach full funding under SFRA by fiscal 2025, and continuing to allocate the funds from the overfunded districts to the underfunded districts like Denville, including in SR2. They've also added a $25 million for extraordinary special education aid. They added something which I don't necessarily agree with, but they added $50 million stabilization aid program, which is basically money that they would be helping the overfunded districts, giving them back some of the money they're taking away. So I don't understand how that works, but they did include some money for that. They also included $75 million for capital maintenance and emergent needs to help school districts undertake emergent facility and system repairs. Not really sure. We didn't get into too many details on that. I'm not sure how that's something we could try to tap or where that would be allocated, but that's interesting, certainly. They're also increasing pre-K funding by $50 million, including $26 million for new programs. So that's great. One which I wanted to maybe see if we could get Damaris maybe to give us maybe some information, not tonight. Now, I don't want to put her on the spot now, but there is a bill advocating for budget flexibility. And this would authorize school districts to maintain a 4% surplus for 2021 and 21-22, and permit the use or transfer of those funds between line items and program categories without approval of the Commissioner of Education. New Jersey School Board supports this legislation, and it's also part of the association's pandemic advocacy agenda. So that's interesting because it would give us more flexibility in the budget process.
And that's, Mr. Capello, right now there's a 10% limitation whenever we transfer funds from one line to another. If we exceed the 10% limitation, we need approval from the county. Therefore, this bill will be more flexible where the district can move a higher percentage without being approved by the county.
I missed some of that.
I'm sorry, Damaris, you're a little bit broken up, but I think if I heard you right, you're saying that if this bill is passed, that we do have a percentage of flexibility now, but if the legislation is passed, it would increase that percentage of flexibility.
Yes, that is close enough. Currently, we have a 10% limitation. If we exceed the 10% transfer, we need to request approval from the county. With this new bill, we can exceed the 10% without request for approval. Was that better?
So Damaris, the part I guess I didn't understand was then how does the 4% factor in, where they say they authorize school districts to maintain a surplus at 4%? Do you understand that part?
Yes, when we finish this school year and there is a surplus, currently we cannot exceed the 2% surplus. If we do, the remaining will be to offset tax levy, or in other cases, send it to reserves. With this new bill, we can exceed the 2% to 4%, where we can utilize up to 4% to offset future budgets.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it truly does give us more flexibility, it sounds like, across the board.
Correct.
One last thing, and I saw this mentioned in, I believe, the Finance Committee meeting minutes about Chapter 44. Chapter 44, as you recall, was the replacement for Chapter 78. It was supposed to be a win-win for school districts and employees. It was going to reduce costs. It was going to offer plans that were better and more cost-effective. School boards and the New Jersey DOE sent out a survey to BAs asking them what their take was, whether their districts would be negatively or positively affected. I think roughly 70 to 80% of districts said that at this point they saw that they were going to be negatively affected. So there is a push, and there is some talk about trying to offer Chapter 44 relief to districts and try to help, because they do understand that there are unintended effects on districts, especially ones like ours that held the line on Chapter 78, didn't give in, kept our costs low, and now we're seeing kind of the flip side. So they are looking at that. I know in the minutes from the finance meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you all discussed some resolutions that school boards had suggested we possibly adopt and send in support of those, in support of that.
Yes, Mr. Cabela, we did discuss briefly Chapter 44, the SBA resolution, but since we were focused so much on the budget and everything else, we decided that we'll take a look at it during the next Finance Committee meeting.
I'd obviously be for that. I would like to see that if the rest of the board agrees. And that's about all I had.
I had one item. On February 24th, I attended the Leading Through Chaos course offered by the New Jersey School Board Association, conducted by Colonel Ash and Major Hickey of the United States Marine Corps. So it was a good program. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. I know I'd like to leave soon. But one thing that came out of it, it was attended by many school board members from throughout the state. And a lot of them are really struggling with COVID in terms of the, dealing with it within the education context. And I know what we've done here, and we really can take a bow and be proud of ourselves how we've dealt with this, especially the preparation initially of what had to be done with the PPE, the foggers, and just all of that. A tremendous amount of pre-planning. So when we had to shut down, we were well prepared for it with the virtual learning and everything. So we've done a great job. Not to say some of the other districts didn't, but you could see that they were struggling with it. The one open-ended thing we left the program with was a lot of people questions, what do we do when the emergency ends? You said, well, we're just going to go back to normal. But what will that consist of? Because I know from my involvement in sports, there's probably going to be people that don't want to go back. Not a lot, but you could see that happening. So that's something to think about as we get towards the end of getting back to having all the kids go back to school, which we're all looking forward to. And the last thing I just mentioned, and probably needed some research, as some of you probably know, but maybe not, that Dr. Seuss books, a number of them have ceased to be published and not sold anymore. So I was wondering if we have, is Dr. Seuss in our elementary school libraries? And I don't need an answer tonight. And I've seen this on the news reports about I think it's 4 or 5 books that they're not going to be selling anymore. But nobody exactly explicitly said what was offensive in those books. So Our Dr. Seuss books are long gone from my household, but I'd like to take a look at them to see exactly what the problem is. But something we probably should look into, see if they are in the elementary schools and what we want to do with them. Leave them or pull them.
Dr.
We certainly
Pellis is
have,
next.
yeah, sure, we certainly have many Dr. Seuss titles, and I think that, one direction we would be looking at is which particular titles, and also are they a source of discussion? Because many of them could be continued to be used as long as there are some discussions about it. And then others, I don't think there's much that we need to change about them. So I'll just give you one example. I think as we've evolved, we now look to say we are appreciating others' differences, where some of the books had the theme of let's ignore each other's differences, like the Sneetches, where they all just decided that they weren't going to acknowledge that anybody was different. So I think that's kind of the idea, is that it doesn't necessarily have, that book doesn't have to go away as long as we're acknowledging that what we're hoping to do is appreciate differences rather than ignore differences. So small differences like that. There are some other issues with some of the titles. Some of those titles were not particularly popular. A few of those I haven't seen in our libraries for quite a while because they were not ones that were checked out. But a few of them, a few of our Dr. Seuss titles are very popular, and some that were listed, I saw the same news articles and things that you did, Dawn, and some of those we don't have because we just, they're older books and they have long gone off of the list of being checked out. Like kids just stopped checking some of them now. But I think the ones that you're probably most familiar with are still readily used, and the Hop on Pop and things like that are still pretty popular books. So we certainly can continue that discussion. I've seen a lot of it in the news lately. I read a lot of articles this week on it.
Laura, do you mind if I just ask? So correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy, but it's with 6 pretty obscure books that the publisher decided to stop publishing, right?
It is, and I wonder if some of it is a little bit about the fact that they're not being purchased very often. I think the only one of those 6 that I think is even somewhat common was the Mulberry Street one, because the rest of them, some of them I wasn't even that familiar with. Like a couple of those we were not in our collections at all. They're pretty old. So I think the ones that when people hear Dr. Seuss are ones that are not of question right now. But again, some of these could be used with discussion, as long as there's discussion that goes along with some of these titles, like the example I just gave.
Well, thank you. And Dawn, I think your report about the training that you attended kind of highlights, you said the district and the administration can take a bow. And I think so often we're so critical of ourselves. And I think that the community also, we get used to the standard that Denville education has had for a long time. But when you look at other districts, and we go out to our training and we are comparing ourselves to other districts across the state, you see that our administration absolutely does an amazing job. So kudos to you guys.
I have a couple of things I'd like to bring to everybody's attention. The first one is I would like to thank Ms. Damaris Ms. Gorowski, because she took a couple of hours out of her day after school hours to go over my questions with the budget, and I wanted to make sure everyone knew how much I appreciated that. The other one is that Miss Plum in Valley View went above and beyond this weekend distributing some rock samples for a presentation I'm doing for her class to the virtual students who are going to be So they will have them in addition to the ones for the in-person students. So I wanted to thank her for that as well.
Nice. And thank you for doing a presentation for the students. I'm sure that's going to be pretty nice.
It's rocks. It's what I do.
And Ms. Wagner, I'd like to comment along the same line about our response to COVID. And I'd really like to thank Dr. Forte for being a fantastic leader through this whole pandemic crisis. I know that Damaris and I meet with him on a daily basis, and it is always, always on his mind. And when other districts in the same meetings that we were at were kind of like, well, what are we going to do? I never saw that from Dr. Forte. It was always like, okay, what are we doing next? How are we going to get kids in? How are we going to support them in every aspect? So from two people, and I'm speaking for you, Damaris, but I know we've had this conversation, we meet with him every single day. This is never like, oh, when are we going to get around talking about it? It's always a conversation, and it's every day. So, you know, I just appreciate his leadership, and I know that board members see us, you know, in your conversations and at committee meetings, but we see it every day. And he really has been a fantastic leader through the whole thing. And never have we ever thought, what are we not going to do? It's always been, how can we do more? You know, and how can he do more? So I appreciate his leadership.
Thank you. That's very nice.
I agree with Dr. Cullis. Dr. Forte has been a tremendous leader to the entire district, to the parents and the students. He's always supported everyone in the district and always been there for everyone. And like Dr. Cullis explained, it was not a matter of how do we do this, is let's do this now. Let's approach this head on, and let's be prepared. Let's be ahead of everybody else. Always, that was the model. And thank you, Dr. Forte, because you have been a great source, always very resourceful, and you always gave us range to go forward, but with a lot of guidance. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. Very nice. It's great working with the two of you as well.
Along those lines, I just want to take a moment. I think that I know I've received several emails this week, and I know that several of my board members have been in discussions with members of the community who are ready to move forward and ready to have our buildings open longer than 4 hours and ready to resume more in-person instruction. Dr. Forte and the administration have been the biggest advocates for that. And in the beginning, when they had meetings with the staff as well as some members of the public, the thought process was in-person is absolutely the best for our students. How can we do it? So going forward, I just wanted to say to everybody that, of course, our administration is looking at how we can get more in person. I know we're all ready to move forward, and as soon as they feel that it is safe, again, with people who are experts in the field of public health, in consultation with them, our administration will, I have no doubt, be the first ones to move our students forward to full days.
And Laura, may I just add on that I think, you know, one of the big steps towards that is vaccination of our staff if they so choose to be vaccinated. So it's great progress that the state is now opened it up to our education staff members. In fact, they initially announced that it was going to be the 15th, then they moved it up even further. So I hope that they will have the opportunity to be vaccinated if they so choose to, and hopefully that'll help to get to a more normal place as we continue to see, even as early as today, or as recently as today, I should say, more data coming out talking about vaccinated individuals and additional restrictions that are being lifted or guidelines suggesting that more and more can be done. So it's all positive news, not meant to get into a vaccination discussion, but at the end of the day, if they so choose to, they have the ability to now. So hopefully this is a positive direction we continue to head in, and as Dr. Forte said at the last meeting, our phase 1 opening was most districts' phase 3 opening. And many of them haven't gotten there or are getting there right now. So I have no doubt that we will continue to, as we feel safe and appropriate based upon discussions with local health officials, both through the government as well as other areas that Dr. Forte has made excellent connections with, that we will continue to find ways to expand in person if parents so choose to for their students, or continue to offer virtual options if that's the parent's choice. So it's we're heading in I feel like we're heading in a good direction. I know we're not there yet. And as the governor and other officials have said, let's not let our guard down yet, but we are heading towards a good direction here, it feels like.
Okay, I know it's late. I just have 2 more very quick things. In all these discussions about the air conditioning and, the projects large projects, discussions about referendums came up. Dr. Forte, can you help us understand? I know you said to us before that should we go to a referendum for something, that the state could pay up to 40% of that cost. When do they notify the district in that process what, if any, portion of the cost they're going to absorb?
So for repairs and things like that, they will pay for it. If it's an addition, you have to prove that it's needed. It's hard to prove that it's needed because you have to show it's like by a square footage. So sometimes when people think that your buildings are too overcrowded, according to them, they're not. So for like something replacement, like a roof, say, they would give you the debt service aid for that. And it does vary. It's supposed to be up to 40%. Sometimes it's not the full 40%. I usually bank on around 25% when we're doing it. But the advantage of it, obviously, is that our local taxpayers don't pay every dollar of it. I know there's interest on that, so that's part of it. But you do get some relief from the state on some of these projects. For example, $1 million project, rather than our taxpayers paying the full million, might be $750,000 plus the interest on the loan.
And this isn't a question necessarily for tonight, but at some point we should get into the discussion of how do we prove that we need the addition, that, after we receive a demographer report and whatnot, if we believe we need additional space, what are the requirements to show the state that we do need it or to meet their requirements? The other question I had was, I know that we have the long-range facilities plan in this budget. Remind me when that's going to be done.
We asked our demographer to start in the winter, and then we asked our long-range facilities plan, our architects, to start theirs later in the winter. So say maybe December for the demographic study, and somewhere, say, February for the long-range facilities plan, something like that.
The reason I ask is, and I had sent you an email, and I certainly did not expect an answer tonight, but we haven't had a comprehensive review of our long-range facilities plan and projects since, I think that was 2020, the one that I emailed you, or 2019 rather. So I think that it might help the budget process going forward if we could have that annual review that you've given us in the past prior to the budget season, which brings to the scheduling of that LRFP, but it sounds like that won't be done in time for the next budget planning process.
So the next budget, for the next budget planning process, we'll probably have some kind of a rough idea. It might not be the final plan, but it would be a rough idea. And that we would ask them to say, like, are there any things that are emergent needs?
I had one thing to the state funding on these various projects, and if I recall, our business administrator got involved with one of these a couple of years ago. It takes a long, long time to get the money from the state. I know we had to get Senator Bucco involved a couple of years back to get money that was supposed to be coming our way. And even after his intervention, it took a while. I think it would lead another 6 months, almost a year, before we got that. We filed the paperwork and everything, you know, certain elements of the paperwork, like the our insurance and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very bureaucratic process, and I doubt it's changed where you're going to get that money right away, but you'll eventually get it. It's something to keep in mind. It's certainly something we should look at and go through the numbers to see how much money we'd actually be saving by getting the state involved in these projects. And ultimately, either way, it's our money.
These are the three things I had for the highlights. Preliminary budget passed on March 8th, final budget presentation and vote on April 26th. Riverview HVAC replacement and upgrade to air conditioning in the all-purpose room and gym. And congratulations to Mrs. Baisley on a retirement as of July 1.
Any board members at home have anything to add? Okay, it is 9:37. I'm going to open up the meeting for our second public comment section. As before, if you have any comments or questions you'd like to pose to the board, please type your full name and address into the chat for the record, and we will ask you to speak.
That was just something
Sure.
she brought up before when we were talking about the presentation.
Should tell that lady she has to wait till public comment section to make a comment.
Mrs. Kana, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to let you all know that in reference to the Dr. Seuss Week, the Valley View Builders Club members also participated by reading books, recording themselves reading books, and we distributed the folder with all of our members reading the books to both of the elementary schools. So we want to commend our Builders Club members for putting in the time and effort to record themselves reading to distribute to the lower grades.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That's great.
Yeah.
They shared
Thank
it with
you.
me too. It was great.
Yeah.
Thank you for working on that.
Thank you. The kids did a lot of hard work for that. So we just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware. Thanks.
So it is 9:40 and I'm going to close public comments section. And I'm sorry, but I forgot I have one more question. When I was looking over the ops minutes, there was mention of a mural, and I wondered if the mural, like if that's definitely going forward or it's just something you guys were discussing.
Yes, the mural is going forward. It's going to be a nice mural on the back of Valley View. And it's pretty much like a school spirit thing with their mascot and the name of the school to highlight the school right next to the new field.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn. Second.
Named by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Lure. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 9:41. Thank you. Thanks everybody for staying so long.